On this episode, I am joined by Logan from Theme Park Shuffle to chat with Drew Hunter, Vice President of Creative Design at Sally Dark Rides and the King of Haunts. Today is October 31st, 2023, and this is episode 613 of the Main Street Magic Podcast.
Jeremy and Rhonda are more than a little fond of Disney World, so they made this podcast to share it all with you. Reports and resorts, top 10 lists of all sorts, Main Street Magic's bringing it home for you.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Magic. I am your host, Jeremy Stein, and while I am not joined by my lovely wife, Rhonda, today, I will soon be joined by my lovely co-host at Theme Park Shuffle, Logan Zawacki. Make sure you check us out on the web at mainstmagic.com, as well as follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at mainstmagic. If you've not done so already, head out to Facebook and search for the Main Street Magic community and ask to join. Then if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, you're going to get brand new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. If you're planning a trip to Disneyland or Walt Disney World, it can be overwhelming and at times downright frustrating. But don't worry, because Mouse Dining removes the frustration of booking Disney dining reservations, alerting you when they spot availability for your desired restaurant, date, meal, and time. This also works for dining packages such as candlelight processional, fireworks packages, and a whole lot more. Head to msmfriends.com to use this free service. And speaking of booking, if you're looking to book that 2024 Walt Disney World trip or beyond, Disneyland, Disney Cruise Line, Universal, pretty much anywhere else in the entire world, you want to go ahead and get a quote from Chuck or Amy with Main Street Magic Travel at mainstmagictravel.com. Our travel services are 100% completely free to you. Happy Halloween, everyone. Today is going to be a little bit different. So Logan and I sat down with Drew Hunter, who is the Vice President of Creative Design at Sally Dark Rides, and he is the King of Haunts, to discuss with him what inspired him to get into the themed entertainment industry as a very, very young child, all the way through high school, into college, and his first job before ultimately landing a career at Sally Dark Rides in Jacksonville, Florida, which he has been at for the past 26 years. Now, we sat down and did this for Theme Park Shuffle, and I highly suggest you go and subscribe, but I thought this was such an incredible conversation that I wanted to share it with the Main Street Magic world. So, it being Halloween, and as you will hear, Drew being the King of Haunts, this is such a cool episode to come out today. I can't wait for y'all to hear it. So I'm going to go ahead and play the episode now. I truly hope that you enjoy.
Welcome to the Theme Park Shuffle. Boy, do we have a special episode for you this time. Our Halloween special is unique in that we are shuffling not a ride, not a land, nothing that you're used to. We are, in fact, doing a host shuffle today. So with me, Logan Zawacki, is our usual ace of hosts, Mr. Jeremy Stein.
Hello, everyone.
But our big surprise with this episode is, instead of David, today we are joined by the VP of Creative Services at Sally Dark Rides, Mr. Drew Hunter. Drew, welcome to the Theme Park Shuffle.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Oh, no, it's an honor to have you here, Drew. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, especially ever since me and Jeremy interviewed you for, what episode was it, Jeremy, of Main Street Magic?
Episode 90, way back in 2018, which was, honestly, we've done over 600 episodes now for Main Street Magic, and it is easily top 5 my favorite episodes. It was just unbelievable and super fascinating.
It was another lifetime ago.
Yes, yes,
That's
truly.
what it feels like. But the crazy part is, it feels like it was just yesterday that we were all together recording that podcast. And so for this episode, obviously, this is one that's going to be coming out around the Halloween time, sort of October theme. What I also wanted to focus on with this one is, instead of us doing some kind of challenge where we're retheming or redesigning something, this time we're going to actually focus on our guest hosts. And in this case, we're going to focus on Drew. We'll call this the Theme Park Career Shuffle episode, because this is one where we're really going to dive deep into Drew's amazing story and what led him to the job he's currently in at Sally Dark Rides. And also Drew's a mentor of mine, and we go to lunch once every week, and so I get to hear all this on the regular. And so Drew is somebody who I'm constantly, he's like my mentor and a part-time psychologist, just listening to me babble and vent and just talk about future and what I envision, and he's so supportive. And for this episode, I so often talk with college students about their careers, and they have it in their mind that they're going to get into the themed entertainment industry right out of college, and then that's going to be their entire life. And that the reality is most people's career paths are not a linear line. It's not you get in and you stay in one spot for the rest of your career. Many of us take different paths. Many of us go in directions that are completely out of our control, with other than the fact that we are making the choice to move on to something new. And Drew's career path, as you guys will hear, is one of those where it's just a miraculous set of events that are triggered one after another, and why Drew is so perfect for a Halloween episode is because this is the king of haunts. This is the king of haunted attractions. He's done walkthroughs. He's done Fright Fest. He's done it all. And it's great to have him here today to share all this with you. So I feel like I've rambled on now for several minutes. Drew, welcome to the show.
I'll send you the $500 for all that introduction. And yeah.
Well, let's start, Drew, since obviously I've done all this rambling on now about your career. Let's sort of start with what got you inspired to even enter what we consider the themed entertainment industry. What was it from either childhood or teenage years, or what kind of were the early inspirations for you?
It's always good to go back and retrace steps, because by doing that, you kind of figure out who you are and who you've become, and why you've become the person you are, and why you follow the career paths you have. It's very important, and let's just call it an older person, which I'm very proud of. I'm happy to have been here this long. It's very important to really examine how you became who you are. It's very healthy to do that. So with my situation, probably began when I was maybe 2 years old, when my grandfather took me to see Walt Disney's Fantasia, the 1940 animated classic. I don't remember that, but it obviously ingrained in my essence and my soul the love of color, of storytelling, of design, and of fantasy. Then my mom took me to it on a re-release in about 1957, 58. That I remember vividly, and it changed my life. Seeing that movie changed my life. And all of those things, the storytelling, the color, all the fantasy, all the elements that are in that film helped sculpt the person that I am today. I will always owe it to that film. I mean, Disney has done many, many fabulous movies, but that was the one that really sparked my soul. And in fact, on that second viewing in about 1957, 58, after I saw the film, I didn't know what all the music was, but I knew I wanted that music. I wanted to have it. So I asked my mom and my dad for my birthday coming up. My birthday is in October 27th, and I asked them, can I have that music for my birthday? My mom went to a local record shop. You know, back in those days, there were record shops. And sold old LPs, and you could sit and listen to them if you wanted to. But there was a little lady at the Broadmoor Music Record Shop in Shreveport, Louisiana, named Mrs. Ahern, and Mrs. Ahern worked with my mom and found the albums, the old albums of much of the music from Fantasia, which she brought home to me for my birthday. My grandfather gave me a little bitty record player, and I would sit in my room for years after that and play the music and relive what I saw on the screen. Now, in combination with that, my parents took me to Disneyland 3 years after it opened in 1958. It opened in 55. I went in 58 for the first time. Going on Mr. Toad, Peter Pan, and Snow White, I came out of that going, this is what I want to do. This is the most fun thing I've ever been on. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana, Northwest Louisiana, and wasn't a hard sell to find something interesting at Disneyland. I mean, I came home and planted a palm tree. I went to a nursery in Shreveport with my grandmother, and I spent my allowance on a palm tree because I had palm trees in Southern California. That's what a big impact it had, that whole trip. By the way, that palm tree, actually the son of that palm tree, is still there in Shreveport, Louisiana, at the old house that I grew up in. But that's all to say that these things helped construct the person that I became and am, which I will never, and one other element of all this recipe is my parents. My parents being absolutely supportive until the day they passed away of everything I did, everything I imagined, all the strange plays I did, plays I wrote and directed, the strange art I did, the haunted houses I did, all of this stuff. All they said was, hey, as long as you're making money with it and having fun, it's, hey, your life. And you can't put a price on that.
Yeah. Amen. That's a pretty good segue there too, Drew, as far as sort of moving into the next big phase of your life and your passions, which sort of transitions into your involvement in theater and how
Right.
you started working on that. So kind of briefly talk to us a little bit about how you got started in that, what kind of kindled that fire in you for performance, and not only that, but then also the writing and the stage design and the stage fabrication as it all sort of came along.
Okay. Again, in about 1958, I believe, there was a new theater built, a beautiful theater built in my hometown at the local college. And the initial premiere production was The King and I, the musical. My mom asked me and my best friend, I was in the either second or third grade, if we'd like to try out for that. So I did. I went and tried out and became one of the King's kids. If you know The King and I, the musical, the King has 60-something children, and in the production, there was as many kids as they could have on stage. So I was one of, I don't know, 30 or 40 children who played the King's children, one of the King's kids. So being in the theater realm, in a beautiful production of that play, was a huge, again, another turning point. Now, before that, I had been in a production in my kindergarten some years before of a play called The Giant's Garden. Now, I remember that kind of pretty well because I remember I wanted to be the giant. I wanted to play the giant. Well, I didn't get cast as the giant. I got cast, okay, as a pansy in The Giant Garden. Okay. So if I ever write my autobiography title is going to be I Was a Pansy in the Giant's Garden. Right? So,
and so it all began.
I love it.
Started, and it has. So anyway, so The King and I was a wonderful experience. After that, my parents put me in creative dramatics with a lady in Shreveport, Louisiana, who taught creative dramatics for children. And then I began doing plays all the way through high school, junior high, high school, and then eventually in community theater for many, many years, and did not only acting and performing, but eventually writing, designing sets for children's theater, adult theater, all kind of theater, and directing. So that was the singular most creative part of my life so far was doing all that, because it's community theater. You had nothing really to work with, so you had to be insanely inventive, and it also taught me how to work with people, because they're not being paid. They're doing it for the fun of it. So you had to really know some psychology and be able to work with people to get the performances, to get the set building done, the lighting done, all the things that had to be done in a theater done. So it was invaluable in that regard.
That's awesome. And so at that point, you're working in Shreveport. You, at that point, is that when college came around, and then you moved away for college?
Well, yeah, no, I went to college in the same town, a college called Centenary College. It's still there, Centenary College of Louisiana. It's a very small school. The entire school population I graduated in 1971, and I think the entire school attendance at that time was about maybe 1,200 students. So it was a small school. It was a Methodist school. I'm not Methodist, but the Methodist sponsored the school, and did theater there. While I was in school, this is an interesting kind of sidelight that also helped me in my career. I was cast by a local TV station, an ABC affiliate in the Northwest Louisiana, East Texas, Southwest Oklahoma, Southeast Arkansas area, pretty large market, as Bozo the Clown. Yeah, that was interesting. I had the guy that ran the TV station, the manager of the TV station, knew me because his kids had been in the Boy Scout troop with me, and I used to tell ghost stories around the campfire. Can you imagine that? And he said, "Man, you'd be great as Bozo the Clown. You scared the hell out of me with those ghost stories." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. You don't want to."
Yeah, is that what we're going for with Bozo? To scare the hell out of kids?
You work well with the kids. So anyway, I became Bozo the Clown for the official Bozo the Clown for that area. There are Bozos all over the country. Every major TV market had a Bozo big top show that they did locally, and so that was excellent. That was a fun time that taught me so much. It taught me how to get up in front of people and talk, being basically unprepared. It made me realize that it's okay to make a complete and utter fool of myself, and it's okay. It's all right. So that was another major element in my ability to perform, but most importantly, work with people and kids. I don't have any kids personally, but I adore children. I don't want to bring them home with me, but I don't want them. But they're fabulous. We need children, and I love my work I have done in children's theater, and the ability to entertain children and to see them. They're not children. They're just smaller adults.
Yeah.
And so that was a great turning point in my career.
And so at what point did Dr. Blood come along?
Oh, Dr. Blood, the dear Dr. Blood, the diabolical Dr. Blood, the insidious Dr. Blood. Dr. Blood happened when I was at a theater group in Shreveport called Gaslight Players. Now, Gaslight Players had a theater on the state fairgrounds. We did melodramas, old-fashioned melodramas every summer, and people would sit at cabaret tables and throw popcorn, and actually throw popcorn at the actors if they didn't, and eat hot dogs and drink beer and so on, and yell at the actors, and it was great fun. Well, somehow or another, I became president of that theater group, and we began doing all these strange things. And at the state fair in Louisiana was in Shreveport, and this is on the fairgrounds. And the fair asked that we do something every year at the theater during the fair in October. So we did, for several years, we did old-fashioned melodramas, a little short melodrama. Nobody went to see it. Nobody cared. And I went to the board of directors and I said, listen, let's do a very theatrical haunted attraction. Let's do a really scary individual toured theater group, a haunted attraction. Now, today, there are haunted attractions across the map. Every city has all kinds of haunted attractions. Back then, in 1970, this is 1975, there were the JCs did haunted houses that were, kind of sad, but there weren't the big official professional haunts like you see now. There was no Halloween Horror Nights. There was no Fright Fests. Nothing like that existed back in those days. And so we were quite a hit. We opened in 1975, and I was involved with that until 1985, through 1985. Dr. Blood, because I said somebody needs to be a spokesperson or a spokesperson for this show, and I knew how to do it. And I was handling all the media for it and writing, media releases for the production. So I said, okay, I'll care about this character called Dr. Blood, and I chose the name Dr. Blood not because it was original, but because it was memorable. People could easily remember that name. And instantly, Dr. Blood took off. And Dr. Blood went and did pumpkin carving contests and costume contests. And it made little appearances everywhere for all those years. So that particular production of 10 days during the Louisiana State Fair paid for the entire next season to operate.
Wow.
It made tons of money. And that was a toured show. It wasn't a walk in and you snake through the whole show. And so, no, this is every group of 20 people would be individually toured through these shows. So we didn't have a big throughput, but we had a quality show.
That's amazing.
And that was fun. So that's how Dr. Blood came about.
And you did that for 10 years. Now, did Dr. Blood always have the same iconic mask, or did you change it up like every year?
Dr. Blood had a mask. It had one eye. That was inspired by the 1961 Hammer Productions movie of Phantom of the Opera, which isn't a particularly great film or a version of the Phantom of the Opera, but I love the mask. And I kind of, my mask was inspired by that. Now, over the years, Dr. Blood's mask did change. I still have, by the way, the original Dr. Blood mask.
Now, is the original one the sort of glass inlaid version?
No, that was later on.
Okay.
Later on, but it had mirror shards all over it.
Awesome.
That was much later on. But Dr. Blood went from Shreveport to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I did one show in Fort Worth, then went from Shreveport to the Wax Museum in Grand Prairie, Texas, in between Dallas and Fort Worth. And we did the Dr. Blood show there for a number of years, very successfully at the Wax Museum. Then went to Fort Worth for 1 year for one show, and then went to Six Flags over Texas for Fright Fest for several years.
And so were
as
those
the whole.
the earliest Fright Fest, or had they already done a couple?
It was one of the first Fright Fest. It wasn't the first Fright Fest, but it was one of the first Fright Fests at Six Flags over Texas. And then Dr. Blood was also the host for the Fright Fest up at Six Flags St. Louis in 1993. That's 30 years ago. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness
That's
gracious.
incredible. That's incredible, Drew. And so as the Dr. Blood sort of took you to the Dallas Fort Worth area and introduced you to a wax museum, is that the wax museum that you ended up moving to and taking the job at?
Yes. Yes. It was called the Wax Museum of the Southwest, in between Dallas and Fort Worth on Interstate 30. It is now Louis Tussauds Palace of Wax, which Ripley's Entertainment owns. There's also a Ripley's in the museum. Now, the very, very Cliff Notes version of that is I went to work there in 1985 as creative director of the Wax Museum, which was for Drew a job made in heaven. I mean, come on, working in a wax museum. How freaking cool is that? So I did that. But then in 1988, the Wax Museum burned to the ground. On September 9th, 1988, it burned to the ground. So we were dark for a year, but built back. And in the fall of 1989, we had our first haunted house at the Wax Museum again. And I was there through 1991.
Okay.
So that was the Wax Museum, yes.
So now let's talk about that a little bit. So here you are, you're working at this wax museum. You've moved away from Louisiana. You've started this whole new life here, and then the place burns down. How do you bounce back from that, Drew? What was going on in your mind with your career and everything you've been working so hard for and creating this new life, just to literally watch it go up in flames?
Well, that's true. That's exactly what happened. And when I moved to Dallas, in 1985, I moved to Dallas. I had no prospects. I had zero prospects, and I knew about the Wax Museum, but I'd never been to it. So my partner and I went out to the Wax Museum one Saturday. I looked around, went, this isn't half bad. It's not the real tourist trap that I thought it would be. It was actually pretty cool. And it was over 300 wax figures on display. It was huge. I called them the next Monday because I knew they did a Halloween deal, and they said, and I said, hey, I wasn't looking for a job necessarily, but I said I want to help you out with your Halloween deal. Well, that led to, long story, but that led to my being hired as creative director at the Wax Museum in the summer of 1985. So then, watching this place burn down, I was one of the two people who discovered the fire on that Friday afternoon of September 9th, 1988. I did. I watched my office burn up. I just moved my office to a part of the building where you could see in through the windows, and I watched everything burn up. Everything burned down. The roof caved in. Eventually, when they cleared off the slab, we went through and picked up glass eyeballs from the wax figures.
That's all that was left, huh? That's all you could repurpose.
That was all that was left.
Yeah.
There was nothing left. And there were countless antiques, a $1 million gun collection, all kind of beautiful motorized and horse-driven, horse-pulled hearses inside, all kind of stuff, all gone. But we revived and came up from they scraped the slab of the museum clean and we built a new one.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a traumatic and strange event that I'm sure not a lot of people have lived through, but it was interesting. But we did it.
Yeah. So now, just as a quick recount, we've got it to where we have inspirations from childhood with Fantasia and early visits to the parks, moving on into theater and the influence of theater and stage creation, storytelling, working with teams, collaborative thinking, and inspiring those who are literally volunteers. Then taking a big gamble, moving out to the Dallas-Fort Worth area without a job and just going to this wax museum because it's something you wanted to check out and you saw it as an opportunity with Halloween coming up, proposing doing an actual Halloween event, helping them out with that. That segues into a career at this wax museum where you're then using all of the skills you've gained so far from your years of art and your background in fine arts throughout your whole life, as well as all the stuff you've learned in theater. And of course, your love and passion for all things Disney and theme parks, tying that together. Now, at what point were you in your own mind saying, I think I want to do a dark ride?
Well, that was never far from my thoughts. In the same summer that I went to Disneyland with my parents in 1958, the first time, that same summer, another amusement park opened on a pier in the Santa Monica, Venice Beach area of Southern California, where my grandparents lived, my dad's parents lived out there. We went to see them every now and then. This park was called Pacific Ocean Park, and if your listeners are not familiar with that, look up Pacific Ocean Park. It was on the old Ocean Park Pier that had been there for decades, and because of the success of Disneyland, I believe ABC had invested in Disneyland, as you know, but CBS, I believe, invested in Pacific Ocean Park and turned it. They closed the piers and the old piers, the old amusement piers, the rides and the coasters and so on, and built this mid-century modern amusement park called Pacific Ocean Park. Refurbished many of the old rides, added some new ones, many of them Ocean Pacific themed, obviously, some not. But my dad took me to that in 1958 for the first time. That, again, was a pivotal moment of my life because at the end of the pier was a ride. And if you look this up, if you look up Pacific Ocean Park, aka POP, you will see that there at the end of the pier was a volcano ride called Mystery Island. You got on a little banana train, went through a little jungle on the end of the pier, then up and into a volcano. There was a vertigo tunnel. There was erupting lava. There was all kinds of special effects. That absolutely made a lasting impact on me, which, looking ahead, decades and decades later, was a major influence in our Volcanoe, the Quest for the Golden Idol ride that we did 2 years ago for Lost Island theme park. That Pacific Ocean Park Mystery Island ride was kind of what I call the kind of beginning of that and the Disney rides, the beginning of my dark ride obsession. And then doing the ride at Lost Island in Waterloo, Iowa, the new park that just opened 2 years ago. And doing the Volcanoe ride was kind of made it a full circle.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. You got to love that. And so I know you were heavily involved in the arts and always drawing and creating throughout your whole life. Do you do you have drawings that your parents kept and saved, or that you even saved yourself, of very early crude versions of rides that you imagined as a child? After visiting these parks, did you come back and create your own rides because you were just so inspired by what you saw and experienced?
Not so much rides, but I do have a little sketch that I did from the just north. We were on the beach just north of Pacific Ocean Park, and I still have a sketch I did as an 8-year-old kid of the pier with the volcano at the end, the roller coaster, which terrified the absolute crap out of me. Yeah, I didn't go on a roller coaster after that for 20 years. The old wooden roller coaster called the Sea Serpent. It originally was called the High Boy, but then they changed it to Sea Serpent for the Pacific Ocean Park. My dad and I, standing below that coaster, he went, "That doesn't look too bad, does it, Drew?" And I went, "No, Daddy, that looks okay." Well, halfway up the first lift hill, and this ride's going chick, 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 up this. I knew I'd made the biggest mistake of my little life. And my dad had never been on a coaster. And he did not understand that part of the fun of a coaster is airtime. He thought we were being thrown out. So he was trying to work against physics and keep me in the seat, which scared me even more. So I love studying coasters. I love ideas of coasters. There's a few that I'll go on here or there, but I'm still not. If I go on an old and it's going clickety clack, up. So I'm done. If I watched one on the computer, a point of view of a coaster, I will not so much a steel coaster, but an old wooden coaster. My hands will start sweating.
Oh no, you got PTSD.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's kind of fun actually, but back then it wasn't. So this is all to say that I didn't really draw so much rides. One other interesting thing that will tie back into the Wax Museum a little bit. When I did and my earlier life, when I did the King and I, as we talked earlier, after that I was so entranced with theater. My dad made me a miniature theater. He built it with a stage, a curtain that would open, a little backstage area, and I could mount my own little plays. I would make little pieces of scenery. I would get lights I'd put in there. I'd put music on, and I'd stage my little production. It wasn't a dark ride, but it was a theater production. Mm-hmm. And I had that for years. Well, when I moved to Dallas, I took that with me and I stored it in the back of the Wax Museum.
Oh.
So when the Wax Museum went up in flames, that, as well as all of my original Aurora plastic monster model kits, went up in flames. Yeah. But hey, they went up in flames of a burning wax museum, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, yes, without a doubt. So now it's 1991. Mm-hmm. You're leaving the Wax Museum.
Yep.
And so what at this point was the catalyst that made you leave the Wax Museum in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
Well, first of all, the Wax Museum and all the people involved were fabulous to work with. Bill Phillips and his team. Bill became one of my very, very dearest friends. He's no longer with us. His son is Bill Davis Phillips, one of my close friends and a fabulous professional. But Chuck and I decided that my partner decided that it was time to try it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we went into business for ourselves. We started a company called Vorta Inc., Vorta Incorporated, VORTA. And we leapt into that with absolutely nothing behind us. No financing, no parachute, no nothing. We just started. We said, well, why not? We didn't know any better. And we did that. We did that until 1997 when I moved to Florida to come to work at Sally. But we focused on haunted attractions. We worked with many of the Six Flags theme parks for Fright Fests. We designed other haunted attractions for personal, from individual folks, and did other art related projects. So after 1991, that's what we did. We had our own little company for a while.
Now, how did you find your niche in haunted, like in this sort of this genre, if you will? What really sort of drove you into that area, and was it seen as kind of like an opportunity where you saw there was opportunity, there was business in this area, and you were already a fan of it? Or what were there specific catalysts that drove you to pursue more haunted attractions?
Well, along with all the other things that we've talked about, one of the things that always fascinated me was haunted houses. I'm talking about theatrical, staged haunted houses, real haunted houses as well, but specifically now talking about staged amusement haunted houses.
Mm-hmm.
Now that began in my grammar school, A.C. Steer in Shreveport, Louisiana, where we'd every mid-October, there'd be a fun night. And one of the rooms in the school, it was a really cool old school, still there, would stage a Den of Horrors. And they would not allow grades 1 through 3 to go through. So once I was in the 4th grade, I paid my dime and went in this Den of Horrors, and one of the schoolrooms, turned over into a spook house. And I came out. I never forget this. I came out and stood in the hallway with my friends, and I went, "Well, that was fun." I said, "But I think I could do better than that." So that was kind of my impetus. And you also have to remember that back in 1991, there was really not. Now you look on the internet, there's tons of companies that do haunted attractions. And some purport to do haunted attractions, but some do them very well. And there's haunted attractions all over the place every year. It was not like that in 1991. There were some, but nothing like it is now. So we had quite a opportunity to be able to make that market happen.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I decided to change my life and come to Sally was because after we did the Six Flags parks for so many years, they knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. They didn't need us anymore. They were all very nice to work with. We had a great time. Had superb experiences with them. But after a while, they caught on. They knew what to do. And there was more competition in the business. My company did not build things. We did not supply, animatronic robots. We did not supply stuff like that. But what we did was work with the marketing departments. We would come up with the stories. We come up with the concepts. We come up with the plans, the designs, all that sort of thing. Sometimes help them with that. But it was not just haunted house. It was also decor in the park, signage, right. All sorts of stuff, music for the parks, Halloween music, the original Halloween music for the parks. We did all that kind of stuff for many, many years. But after a while, there were so many other people doing it, and the parks knew how to do it by then. So there was time to make a change.
And so prior to you starting at Sally, you had met John Wood, our chairman, one of our original 3 founders of Sally Dark Rides. You had met him through a trade organization like IAPA, or had you randomly met him just when he came by the Wax Museum or at Six Flags? Like, how did that start?
Right. In 1986, we opened up, after I was at the Wax Museum for over a year, we opened up their first horror section called Dr. Blood. Dr. Blood was the host of it. They had a wax figure of Dr. Blood. Dr. Blood's Theater of Horrors. It was a pretty extensive horror section. Well, one day, this guy named John Wood showed up at the Wax Museum with probably one of his animatronics in the back seat of his car to talk about maybe the Wax Museum having something like that. Well, I was not in that meeting, but Bill Phillips called me and said, "Hey, there's a gentleman here. Would you please tour him through the museum?" So I went up and I met to the lobby and I met John Wood. And I did. I gave him a tour all the way through the museum. That was 1986. And the new horror section. And we talked a little bit. And he said, "Man, this is a really great place. It's really nice." So I stayed in touch with John and saw him at IAPAs after that, several IAPAs. And we said, "Hey, maybe one of these days we ought to work together." And John would say, "Yeah, well, maybe one day we will." Well, in 1996, situations developed where I called John one afternoon after IAPA that year and said, "Hey, how you doing, John? Hey, Drew, how you doing?" "I'm fine." I said, "Hey, John, do you have any business, anything I might be able to help with, or like a job or or whatever?" And he went, "Well, send me your portfolio." That was in early December 1996. On January 20th, 1997, I reported to work from my first day at Sally. That's how fast it happened.
That's amazing. And again, important note for any students out there listening or anybody in their career path, networking is key, because you never know when a connection will prove to be one of the most pivotal, life-changing moments in your life.
Absolute words of wisdom. And the other thing is, don't be shy.
Yeah.
You've got to get out there. You've got to sell yourself. You've got to, and yes, you're right. It is important to know people. It is important to meet people and make those connections, because even if you make a connection and they go away and you don't see them for years, in this particular business, they're going to come back. You're going to hear about them again, and they may hear about you. So always maintain those connections and never burn bridges. Never.
Perfect. Awesome.
I'm gonna interject for the first time, because I've just been, I know I've been so quiet.
Welcome to the party, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. I've been so fascinated by your story, and I think this is a great segue from what you're saying as well. And for me as a parent of two teenagers, hearing the support of your parents and everything that you were doing growing up. I mean, for you to, at 7, 8 years old, to find something that you loved, and then for them to support you throughout your entire upbringing and career, and for you to go into so many different things that would support that career. Like, I sit back and I think of, you know, when I was a kid and everybody would say, "Well, what do you want to do?" "I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a policeman." But most people didn't do those things in the end.
Right.
And to see that you've created an entire career and your parents' support and everything is just absolutely unbelievable. And that you touched every facet of the theme park and dark ride and haunted industry to get you where you are today is just like, it's been blowing my mind this whole time. That's why I've just been sitting over here, staying very quiet. It's super impressive. And I think it's a lesson to not only kids growing up and things that they want to do, you know, and you going through a very unusual path, you know, to parents in supporting their children in the things that they take interest in, I think is just absolutely unbelievable.
Well,
like, just amazing.
It was pivotal. It was pivotal. And, you know, the other thing, I was talking with someone about this just the other day, that, you know, you read about some people, and some people who are very notable in the amusement and theme park industry and design wise, who grew up in Southern California. and they were kind of there. They went to Disneyland all the time, or they began working at Disneyland when they were, teenagers, and such. I look back at my life, and I grew up in Northwest Louisiana, and in a middle class family. My dad was an accountant. My mom was a homemaker, basically. She had a couple of little part-time jobs, but basically a homemaker. And when I look back at how did I wrangle all that and do all that, is because not only did I find a passion, many passions of, between theater and the dark rides and movies. We haven't even talked about that, and some other things that came into play. But I was so fortunate to have the parents who were so supportive, because they had this weird kid, this strange little child who would sit in his room for the hours in that little theater I told you about, and making little sets and playing music, classical music too, that would, none of their other people they knew had kids like that doing this weird stuff. But my parents stood by me and they said, we love you and we support you and we're happy that you are finding your bliss. So that is a remarkable thing.
Well, it wouldn't be Halloween without a treat, and that is the conversation with Drew. It also wouldn't be Halloween without a trick, and that is only part 1. So if you would like to get part 2 of our conversation with Drew Hunter, which, believe it or not, gets even better than part 1, you're going to have to go out, search for Theme Park Shuffle on your favorite podcast platform, and hit that subscribe button, and you can go ahead and immediately check out part 2. Thank you all so much for listening. Happy Halloween. I hope everyone will be safe tonight. You'll enjoy your treats. You'll enjoy your tricks and so much more. If you like what you hear, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can get episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And Rhonda and I will be back this Friday with a brand new episode where we will talk about our lunch at Tusker House, all new items at Three Bridges, and a few of our favorite quick service items at both Epcot and Magic Kingdom. We return to see if they're just as good as we remembered. So again, don't forget to subscribe and get these episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And you know that Rhonda and myself, Logan, and I'm sure Drew would be super thankful if you could please leave us a rating and review, because it really does help our show grow. That's all we've got. We'll see you real soon.
Jeremy and Rhonda are more than a little fond of Disney World, so they made this podcast to share it all with you. Reports and resorts, top 10 lists of all sorts, Main Street Magic's bringing it home for you.